Hello, and thank you for joining us. My name is Stephen Liggett, and with my friend and long-time podcast host, Laura Brady, we're back with another episode of the Northeast Research podcast series, A Blind Date with Knowledge. Continuing the theme of Series 3, we hit the road again, this time visiting the Regent Centre in Newcastle. Regent Point is a vibrant, busy and often noisy open office space hosting several healthcare and research teams. The aim of the visit was to meet with two representatives from MedConnect North. MedConnect North is an initiative supported by the National Institute for Health and Care Research and Academic Health Science Network North East and North Cumbria. MedConnect North aims to offer a service to technology companies that have a medical device idea, providing guidance and assistance throughout the journey of the device, from idea inception to hopefully commercialisation. For the majority of the interview, we speak to Craig Mower, the project manager for MedConnect North. He goes into further detail about the role of MedConnect North, takes us through the journey of the innovation pathway, and shares some recent successes. Towards the end of the conversation, we are joined by Hyder Latif, the Research Operations Manager for MedConnect North. He talks to us about his role, new research themes that he has encountered over the past couple of years, and we finish with a really interesting and relevant discussion about artificial intelligence and the role that is going to potentially play in healthcare. If you enjoy this conversation, or you're a medical devices company that has an idea, stay tuned till the end of the podcast as Craig gives out all of the contact details for MedConnect North, including the website and social media handles. As ever, thank you very much for listening, and please do get in touch if you have any feedback. I hope you enjoy this really interesting conversation with a company that is on the very edge of driving innovation in the Northeast.
Hi, welcome to A Blind Date with Knowledge, Series 3. I'm your host, Laura Brady, along with co-host Stephen Liggett.
Hello.
And Craig Mower from MedConnect North. Would you like to tell us a little bit about your day-to-day and kind of what MedConnect stand for?
So, I'm project manager of a service called MedConnect North. It sits within the NHS, but it's kind of partly funded by the regional NIHR and partly funded by the Academic Health Science Network. And the reason that we're set up is basically to help SME companies and our clinicians set up medical device studies in the NHS.
And just to clarify, SME is a small medium enterprise. Yeah.
So it's companies that generally haven't got a huge lot of funding behind them. They've got usually just enough to get a study off the ground with assistance. And then I suppose the hope is that they would then carry that on and invest in a larger study, and then bring that investment into the region.
And are these studies in with devices that are already existing, or is it sort of novel technologies, novel devices?
It can be a study of a device that's already in existence, but it could be potentially a novel use, or it could just be a completely new product that hasn't been used before. Or it could have been a device that's been used elsewhere but hasn't been trialled in the Northeast yet. Or it could have been trialled abroad, but not in this country.
So you're seeing that there's been an increase in these sorts of devices. I'm just thinking with the sort of remote adaptations we've had since the pandemic. What's the trend that you've seen there?
Definitely remote monitoring. So wearable devices where a patient can wear a patch, let's say, and it can monitor heart rate.
And is that real-time data for
so it's in real
clinicians as
time.
well?
It's over 24 hours. It can be over a period of weeks. and that can then be fed back to the clinical team who's based at a site, an NHS site. I guess the idea is that they'll know there's an issue even before the patient will.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the ideal scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than waiting for a patient to present at the hospital with symptoms
Mm-hmm.
or an illness, we can deal with that before it becomes an issue.
Yeah, I mean, in my role in research, I've seen a lot of trials sort of, a lot of at-risk groups are on follow-up pathways. There's a lot of trials that have come to be centred around patient-initiated follow-up and learning how to spot those symptoms, but obviously this is sort of that even more advanced level of device-initiated follow-up.
Yeah, and I mean, we've briefly touched on in previous podcasts and previous interviews about instigating early intervention, and now that it's the best for the patient. It reduces the pressure on the actual acute services and devices, which seem to have a place in this large scale holistic approach to healthcare. So I guess my first question for you, Craig, is that you mentioned you're working with fairly small enterprises. I'm presuming there's positives and there's negatives to that. So can you maybe talk a bit through about the challenges and the rewards of working with these startup companies?
And just a bit of context, because usually the companies in this sort of vein are big sort of conglomerates.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a different approach, isn't it? With I guess with the MedConnect North style.
So I suppose the first thing is they're usually unaware of the approvals processes that are necessary to get a device used in the NHS. Whereas the bigger companies, they've already been through these processes hundreds of times, so they know what's needed and what's necessary and what it costs as well, and also the time that it takes. A big issue we often have is that companies come to us with an idea to use their device and they want a trial opening tomorrow.
Right.
So then we have to kind of guide them through the reality of the process, I suppose, which is that it's going to take time.
And do you help them to write a protocol?
So we also say, if you get us on board, we can actually speed the process up because we can help you design the study, we can help you draft the documentation and the protocol, we can help you apply for grants if you need more financial backup, and then we can also signpost you to other services in the region once the trial's over. So for instance, the commercialisation team who will help them take it to market, and even before we get to them, like there's that initial kind of device manufacturing approval, like the ISO approvals that are necessary. Sometimes they approach us and they haven't even been through that stage yet.
Forgive me, what's ISO?
So it's kind of like, it's like almost like CE marking, but it's a set of standards that a manufacturer needs to go through, even pre-CE marking.
Okay. CE marking.
So CE marking, well, it's actually what the European marking is, so it's the safety marking.
I've seen it, I just never really understood.
So post-Brexit we have the UK CA marking, so that's our version of that.
I see, okay.
It's just proving that it's safe and it's not going to harm anyone.
So you, so the journey then from contacting you could, depending on what sort of position these companies are in, could be quite a long journey.
I suppose so. Ideally they'd approach us and they'd be at what we call technology readiness level 5.
Okay. Oof. And
is
that 5 out of 10? 5 out how?
It goes to about 10.
Oh right, okay.
Right.
So
don't quote me on that. So basically, they've been through all those initial approvals. They've got the safety marking. It's proven that it works for the intended purpose, and it's ready to be trialled in a clinical trial. That's the ideal scenario.
So at this point, I mean, I'm just sort of relating it back to things I know. So I studied drug design. You've got like phase 0 of a drug, and there's some stages of target development and manufacturing that comes before phase 0 to make sure you know that it's there. So I guess it's that sort of pre-trial process. The technology's been sort of stratified and it's been proven for efficacy, but would it have been applied in any like human use at this point, or is that?
No, I mean it can be. It's usually trialled in a lab setting.
Okay.
But usually not with humans.
With like sort of controlled input.
In a control environment.
Yeah.
Or if it has been used on humans, again, it's in a controlled environment. And it's usually with humans that are working on the study. It's on the manufacturing side, so it's kind of
So in-house sort
what
of
you
testing.
call healthy volunteers who are involved in the manufacturing. So you're not opening it out to the public yet.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
The service, I guess you've described the MedConnect offers. It seems very bespoke to the company's need that you're working with, but I guess for like anyone who's out there who has an idea, or there's a company who is listening to this, have you got like a pathway or a kind of general timeline of how long these things take?
That's quite a good segue into the AHSN pathway.
Been doing this a while now, Craig.
Professional. So we sit in the centre of the innovation pathway that's been developed by the AHSN.
And can we just clarify what that is?
So let's talk about
the academic health.
So Academic Health Science Network was set up to kind of link, I guess, the universities, the academics in with the clinicians and the companies. So they kind of, the idea is they tie everything together.
Great theme of collaboration.
Yeah,
and
it's a bit like I guess it's like an ecosystem way of designing trials. Is that is that right, Craig?
Okay.
Yeah. So if we talk about each extreme, so initially you've got ideas assessment. So you've got that idea. You might have seen a clinical need. You've thought of a way of addressing it. How do I make this thing? So you've got market research, discovery, culture, ideas and intellectual property, unmet needs and clinical expertise. That's the first kind of the nucleus.
Yeah.
At the other extreme, you've got spread and adoption. So you've got taking it to market, so scaling it up, regional adoption, national spread, and then international spread. And then right in the middle of that is clinical trials and evidence generation. So they've had the idea, they've built the device, they want to test it in a real world environment. And the best place for that in this country is the NHS, if not the world, to be honest. So I guess the ideal pathway, and we say this to everyone, like the ideal is come to us as soon as you can.
Yeah.
Because at the very worst, we can then signpost you to someone, before our process, who can get you through the correct approvals to then come to us for the trial.
I guess you can also incorporate elements into that design process that make it sort of
to make it smoother.
Easier.
And then even beyond, we can make the transition to taking it to market smoother as soon as you get to us.
There is a need to branch academia and healthcare, because we spoke to Professor Vicky Rand in a year or so ago, and these great ideas in universities, but they have no access to patient populations, and that's where I guess guys like MedConnect North and the collaborations between the academic institutions and healthcare institutions, it needs to be, it just needs to flow really well, because the ideas aren't always not always formed in the National Health Service or by clinicians and consultants. It can come from outside, and so you're facilitating that, I guess, flow of information and ideas, which is it's a great thing to be doing. And so just on the theme of ideas, have you got any success stories that you can talk about? And we're very aware you can't discuss all of your trials and all of the devices on this innovation pathway, but Has there been any things recently that you think can really make a difference?
So the flagship study that me and Hyder always discuss is a study that's led by Tobias Muir at James Cook, which is the BEST study. So the initial...
It's just the BEST, or is it
the
called?
BEST, is that the acronym?
It is the BEST and
So
the BEST.
Okay.
It's using bleomycin, which is traditionally a cancer drug.
Yeah.
Using it to treat birthmarks or chronic vascular inflammations.
Mm.
And it uses a process called electrosclerotherapy.
Okay.
So it's this. So the device it's kind of like a needle device, but it uses electronic pulses, and essentially it penetrates to the cellular level, and then you insert the bleomycin. And basically, in a nutshell, it decreases the inflammation, and the effects are really fast. So the patient only has one treatment, then they have a period of follow-up. And Tobias takes a photograph before the trial, and then a few weeks after the initial treatment. And the effect is like stunning.
And is it maintained as well? How long has it been going for?
So the initial, so it opened in it might have been pre-pandemic actually, 2019 or 2020. So the first kind of arm of the trial is I think, well, we hit recruitment in December, but we're still processing results. We're opening a multi-site arm, so we're going to open the sites in London. I think St George's are on board, and we're going to open it to children. That's ideally Great Ormond Street and Birmingham Children's Hospital, because the plan is to catch it when the patient is an infant, and then deal with it then, so then they don't have to suffer essentially into adulthood. Because I think one of the outcomes of the study is to measure the patient's well-being and the patient's, I guess, mental health before and after. And we're noticing straight away they just feel so much more confident and just better. So that's one that we always promote wherever we go.
And what a great example of like an idea, development, device was made, recruitment all done in the Northeast, and now you're going to expand it across the UK. I suppose the question I have on that is that's the early intervention to get these patients into that trial has still got to come from the clinicians or from like a clinic. So that's kind of your traditional recruitment strategies. Do you see a time where devices can be used to kind of change the way that patients are recruited into trials, or like you use the data from devices to develop a trial and not the other way around?
Definitely, and I think cloud-based data is a big thing.
The future.
We haven't got anything open at the moment, but they're looming on the periphery. I think probably it's a matter of time before we do a big clinical trial in the region of a data hub or a cloud-based.
So Craig, how does MedConnect North fit into the sort of local environment for local patients and the populations around the Northeast?
Yeah, and that's probably the most important thing really. It's because we live in such a socially deprived region, and because health, morbidities and mortality rates are so high, it's how can we tackle that using medical devices, and how can we get new and improved and novel ways of using devices in studies in the NHS in the region. And that's part of why we exist, is to get the companies up and running, is to get the clinicians that have the ideas to get those in the clinical setting.
So
it's making it streamlined and making it easy for them.
Yeah, so you mentioned that the SMEs sort of approach MedConnect North, but so I'm guessing you also have an open channel of engagement with patients and users of the technology?
Yeah, we do that as well, and of course we go out to events and things, and we try and get in touch with SMEs.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose it's not so much the patient side.
No, I'm just thinking the level of like PPIE and things like this.
Yes, in terms of PPIE, so every trial that we open, you have to have PPIE.
That's great.
Because you just have to.
Yeah,
you can't really get it through ethics without now. So
it's written into the protocol.
So any documentation that you're drafting that's going to end up in a patient's hands, we try and get it seen by potential patients in the drafting process. So it's in layperson's terms. It's not just the clinician sitting down, putting in medical terms and terminology that only they can really understand. It's about making sure that the patient coming in can read that document, know what they're signing up for in terms of the research, know what they're going to get out of it, know of the potential pitfalls as well, and the risks.
Yeah.
So that really sounds that patients are definitely at the heart of the work that MedConnect North are doing.
Definitely.
I would love to see sort of a panel of patients suggested medical devices, and having that insight, that window into people's life. If patients come forward and have ideas of devices that would really assist them with managing a long-term condition, or like taking medicine or different things like this.
That's a really good point. So where have you seen the best ideas come from then? Because we spoke about the connection between academia and healthcare and stuff, but do clinicians still drive the ideas, or do patients, do they identify needs for themselves?
I think it comes from the clinician, but obviously they're just a proxy for the patient at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So really it's coming from the patients.
Yeah.
Quite often, if an idea has come from an SME, sometimes we spend a lot of time just asking them, can you actually prove the clinical need for this device?
Well,
quite often we'll say what you need to do first before a clinical trial is do a survey of service users, of staff, of anyone that's going to be using this device, just to gauge whether or not you're actually addressing a need, and it's not just you coming up with an idea that you think is going to be beneficial.
That's fantastic, because there's certainly been times in my limited research career, but when you see trials get open and then you speak to the nurses who are trying to recruit, and they just go, no patient's going to sign up for this, or follow-up's going to be so onerous that the patient's just going to drop out eventually. So it's really heartening that you guys are switched on enough to be asking those questions at the start of the process.
And it's a really difficult conversation to have with them, because this is their dream. They're picking apart. But ultimately it's better for them to go back and do that survey and generate that initial evidence.
Exactly.
Than just plunge headfirst into a clinical trial that's going to cost thousands of pounds.
But I guess you do need that.
No impact. And
You do need that streamlined, expertise at first. Otherwise, you might not get all of the products to test. So I guess you need that streamlined, I was going to say blinkeredness, but that's not really the right word, is it? Myopic. Yeah,
God,
that's a beautiful one.
It is.
And then you bring in your expert on the research process, and then there's this all to do with collaboration. That SME does not have to become an expert in research because they're collaborating with companies like yourself.
Because they've got the experts on.
Yeah.
It's a very final thing, and it's a question that we ask everyone who's been on. So what do you think is in the pipeline? Where do you see MedConnect North being in maybe 5 or 10 years? And then how do companies get in touch with you? Have you got a website? Have you got any social media platforms?
Yeah. So I think as a service, we're already kind of expanding into other regions. And I think ideally I can just see that increasing.
Right.
MedConnect North, level. South, East, West.
MedConnect.
Worldwide.
International.
Which is...
Well, don't forget who interviewed you.
Yeah.
Which is hello, Hyder. That was good timing.
Things like the AHSN started as regional and then became national.
And then have you got a a website or anything? Or
so we've got MedConnectNorth.com, which is the hub of all the information. The Twitter handle is at
MedConnect North.
MedConnect North.
As simple as that.
We're on LinkedIn.
Just search MedConnect North and we'll come up.
Search MedConnect North.
I do also appreciate the response that if you Google it, you will find it.
Well, we hope
Other
so.
search engines are available.
But no one uses Ask Jeeves anymore.
Or Bing.
Well, Bing will tell you.
Be kosher. So Hyder Latif, hello. You're the Research Operations Manager for Medical Technology in MedConnect North.
Yes.
It's a lengthy title, so
It is,
what does
it is.
If you could sum it up briefly, what would you say?
So my role is to look after medical device research studies on behalf of the NIHR North East and North Cumbria. So any studies that come in, they've got medical technology and led out of this region, I look after them. So that's one part of the job, and the other part of the job, obviously, is why we're here today, is about MedConnect North. And so my main job is to engage with medtech SME companies, whether they're regional, international, national, to help them engage with the NHS to deliver clinical research as part of the innovation pathway that's set out by the AHSN. So really it's just about finding out about the new novel treatments out there, whether it be an app or a surgical instrument, wherever it may be. Just figure out how that would fit in the clinical pathway of the NHS and to do research to see what type of benefit it would bring, whether it be cost effectiveness, whether it be direct patient benefit to the health. So it's quite an exciting job, I must say.
What are some of the current themes that you see in them? What's the
I think
climate like?
So one of the main things at the moment is, especially after COVID, is like the digital impact. So doing everything remotely. We've got in vitro diagnostic tools now, so point of care testing at homes.
Yeah.
That's come on a long way. I'm trying to reduce that patient having to come to hospitals now and do remote assessments.
Especially it's like more vulnerable at-risk people.
Exactly.
So it's preferable to be in.
Definitely ties into like the pandemic era that we've just lived through. Is that you don't, the patients that can be treated or diagnosed or consented at home, probably the best place for them, isn't it?
Exactly, personalised response.
Exactly, and then the other thing is like virtual wards, which is massive.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm going to conferences, there's like 3 or 4 different virtual ward companies out there trying to get into the NHS. So it's quite.
So virtual ward, I can't
So
picture that in my head. What would that mean?
So basically, your patient that's on a board, you'd be doing like the observations, vital signs, but then maybe doing like giving them medication. So what the virtual ward is doing is basically saying that patient's going to be home, but they can still do the same amount of assessments and investigations remotely, basically.
That's very interesting.
During COVID, I think Health Teas did COVID virtual wards, and so they could track the oxygen levels in the blood remotely, and then if they needed intervention or to bring them in, real-time data, but they were at home to the point of having to come in.
So it's like having the wearable devices at home and being able to monitor them remotely. And we were at the Giant conference last year, and I remember seeing this company, Virtual Wards, and they were saying that they had a laptop open and they had like all of these different vital signs, observations going on. And they're saying this is actually a live patient in Mexico that we're looking after.
Amazing, isn't it?
And I'm just thinking, so like you can see what's going on, and even to a point, if the patient falls, they would know as well.
That's
amazing. And then the last theme that really come along is AI, artificial intelligence.
We need a
big
whole
topic.
podcast
I was going to
on this
say,
topic, but
you can come back Hyder and speak
great.
about AI. But that is, I guess, in a sentence or two, is AI the future of healthcare? It's a big question.
It is a big question, and I do think it's got a massive role to play.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of work that's going into AI stuff now as well. Especially being able to pick up algorithms within radiology being one of the
it can read the scans and then it improves as it learns. I mean,
so it's self-learning to see what a normal scan is and what an abnormality might look like.
Like a diagnostic review.
Karl Marx's dream, isn't it? Just get the robots doing everything.
Yeah, but it should always be
Always comes back to
alongside
Max.
consultants, I think.
Yeah, no.
There should always be a human
There should be,
in
but
conjunction with it. Do you think?
yeah, to a point. But then I'm thinking, at one point, like, are we going to let trust the AI to do the
And
work
to
for
actually
us?
take over,
Yeah.
I've seen loads of examples of great technology half implemented, so it's like half of its functionality. So I guess one way to really know its true place is to fully trust it and let it do that job.
Tesla. Let it just drive.
Let the car drive.
We've discussed Teslas a lot. Let's not go there.
Well, we've had this discussion with Professor Sunderland Uni, John Murray.
Yeah.
So he designs and builds robots
John,
and AI software, doesn't he?
For medical purposes.
Yeah.
Healthcare,
And he says, I could happily just get in a Tesla, press the button and just let it drive me. But for a lot of people, there's that initial sort of
fear,
mental
isn't it?
hurdle,
Yeah.
mental fear that we all need to get over.
There's already trials at LFTs, isn't there, where they're using robotic surgery and the outcomes for patients is phenomenal, less invasive. So maybe, I guess, it's getting over that hurdle and maybe embracing the technology that we have available.
But there's still a human guide in it, though. That's the thing.
Oh, there is.
It's when we just put the
It's next
patient on
level
the
of
table
me to get the robot to do
get
it.
the robot. That's the turning point.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
So just before we finish, again, a big thanks to Craig and to Hyder for joining us today. What do you think is the best thing that you guys do, and why should people join MedConnect North if they can?
I think it's engaging with lots of different people from lots of different institutions and backgrounds and services who all bring different levels of expertise and different skills.
Amazing.
But we try and tie it all together.
Well put, Craig. Well put, yeah.
That's
what
beautiful. And final chance to give out those social media handles if you've got them, Craig.
At MedConnect North, and LinkedIn is just MedConnect-North.
And give the website again.
www.medconnectnorth.com.
Amazing. Thank you very much both for your time.
Yeah.
Thanks
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. It's lovely to meet you.
We really hope you enjoyed that podcast. And if you did, please look out for another conversation that myself and Laura have with Craig. He returns for a more in-depth conversation about the data that is derived from devices, how this could potentially improve research. And this takes us into the area of health inequalities, a really important area and something that myself and Laura are very passionate about. We also get onto the topic of psychedelics in science, an interesting topic that we were all keen to talk about and keen to learn a bit more about. The idea that psychedelics and hallucinogenics are now potentially the next frontier of research, how it can improve mental health and perhaps be used a little bit more in research and healthcare in general. There are several healthcare lectures around the subject of psychedelics in science happening across the north in the coming weeks. So we hope to attend a couple of those and expand our discussions around this subject a little further. So hopefully you can join us for those conversations as well. Once again, thank you ever so much for listening. Your support is really welcomed. Thank you and take care.